Begin this hour with ceasefire negotiations underway in Islamabad, Pakistan, where U.S. and Iran delegations have gathered for what was supposed to be ceasefire negotiations to try to hammer out a deal to end the war that has brought chaos to the region and upended the world's energy markets. So far today, each delegation has met with Pakistani officials, but it appears direct negotiations between the United States and Iran have not even started. Two members of the Iranian delegation tell MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid that, quote, talks will not start until a ceasefire is agreed in Lebanon. As of now, we haven't met with U.S. officials in Islamabad, but we have had extensive conversations with our Pakistani brothers and hosts and have relayed our position. As a backdrop to all of this, President Trump claimed this week that the U.S. had won a, quote, total and complete victory after agreeing to the 2-week ceasefire deal with Iran. But that supposed ceasefire remains on shaky ground, and it's hard to square Trump's assessment with the reality of the situation. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. He is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Quigley, welcome to the weekend. Let me read to you a social media post from the president yesterday about Iran negotiations, and I'm quoting here. The Iranians don't seem to realize they have no cards other than a short-term extortion of the world by using international waterways. The only reason they are alive today is to negotiate. President Donald J. Trump. I don't know, Congressman Quigley. From where I sit, it would appear that the Iranians have a whole lot more cards than the president is willing to publicly admit.
Yeah, if this is victory, we're in really big trouble. When this conflict started, the strait was open. We hadn't lost service members. We hadn't spent $1 billion a day. We hadn't risked the extraordinary threat of escalation that's taking place. And oh, by the way, the regime is still in place. In fact, the harder liners have taken hold than were in place at the beginning of this. And the nuclear weapon, the uranium they need for nuclear weapons, they still have that stockpile. So how this is a victory is just beyond comprehension. It's a president who wants to claim victory no matter what happens.
Congressman, Lebanon is said over and over again, before they got to, anyone went to Pakistan, that they didn't want to negotiate until there was a ceasefire of Israel bombing Lebanon. The United States delegation went, the Iranian delegation went. We are now at 9 o'clock a.m. our time, which is, I think, 6 o'clock there. The sides have not met. Each side has met with the Pakistanis, the brokers of this, of whatever comes next. I'm a little bit confused why the administration would send anyone when the basis of the negotiation is that Lebanon is no longer being bombed by Israel. It seemed. Do you think we're getting played here? What is this is continuing to extend out quite a period.
Obviously, it depends on the good faith of Israel deciding not to continue the conflict in Lebanon.
Do you think they're going to stop bombing Lebanon?
You would have thought that we would have figured that out, that we would have had an understanding and agreement with Israel, our ally here, before we sent people out to try to negotiate. And obviously, I think you look at what Iran is putting on the table so far and before the negotiations formally begin, and they are maximalist demands. I mean, if anyone thinks that these two sides are going to come together, they haven't been watching. This is a regime that has taken a massive pounding, and they're still fighting an asymmetric war. They still have the strait closed. And they still have a 1.5 million man army. So those threats are still there. If we thought we had victory, we weren't paying attention. If they think they're going to come to some long-term agreement here, what is our demands here? What do we really want? You know, the fact is we had Iran in compliance with the JCPOA, a treaty I supported, in which they were not moving forward to build nuclear weapons. Trump pulled out of that unilaterally. So he has created this. Obviously, this is a horrific regime, but the president has only made the situation far worse.
What's unfolding now feels less like diplomacy in motion and more like a negotiation that hasn't even decided what it's negotiating about. The fact that delegations have gathered but not actually met tells you everything about the disconnect at the heart of this process. Before any discussion can begin, there isn't even agreement on the conditions required to start talking. That alone challenges the narrative of momentum. If a ceasefire in one theater is a prerequisite for talks in another, then this is no longer a single negotiation, it's a chain reaction of unresolved conflicts. And when diplomacy becomes conditional on multiple moving parts, it becomes incredibly easy for the entire process to stall indefinitely. At the same time, the repeated claims of total victory ring increasingly hollow against this backdrop. Victory, in any meaningful sense, implies control over outcomes. But what we're seeing instead is a situation where key leverage points, like the Strait of Hormuz, remain contested, regional violence continues, and even the basic structure of negotiations is unclear. That's not control, that's uncertainty. There's also a deeper strategic contradiction emerging. Publicly downplaying an opponent's leverage while privately engaging in urgent negotiations sends mixed signals. On one hand, it projects confidence. On the other, it suggests recognition that the situation is far from resolved. And in international politics, inconsistency can weaken negotiating power just as much as overt concessions. What makes this moment particularly fragile is how expectations have been set. When objectives are broad, shifting, or undefined, it becomes nearly impossible to measure success. That vacuum is then filled by political messaging rather than tangible outcomes. But messaging cannot substitute for reality indefinitely. Meanwhile, the longer this ambiguity persists, the more space it creates for escalation elsewhere. Conflicts rarely stay contained when their underlying issues remain unresolved. Instead, they tend to expand, pulling in new actors, new demands, and new risks. Ultimately, this is not just a test of diplomacy, it's a test of coherence and credibility. Without a clear starting point, a shared framework, or even agreement on what peace looks like, negotiations risk becoming performative rather than productive. And in a situation this volatile, performance is not enough to prevent the next crisis.